The rain battered Noah Caldwell's Minneapolis apartment, a merciless drumbeat mirroring the chaos in his chest. Hours ago, he'd been fired from Peak Pulse Outdoor Gear, the company he'd given 7 years of his soul, with a brutal, "You lack the creativity we need." Sophia, his new boss, her manicured nails flashing like knives under the office lights, slid termination papers across the desk, her eyes cold as winter stone. Noah's world tilted, his breath catching as shock rooted him to the chair. 7 years gone. Worse, his rejected designs, mocked as uninspired, were now Liam's triumph, stolen and set to launch under a campaign to wipe Noah's name from the industry he'd shaped. At 41, he'd trusted talent would shield him. His Trailblazer backpacks, balanced like an extension of the body, and multiflex jackets, defying blizzards, had doubled Peak Pulse sales, earning awards and adventurers' trust. But Sophia, a fashion outsider, deemed him obsolete, her glossy trends eclipsing his craft. Whispers in meeting rooms, younger colleagues averted gazes, and now vicious rumors. Noah as a traitor, spread like poison, orchestrated to crush him. Liam's betrayal, the protege he'd mentored like a brother, cut deepest, his theft a blade in Noah's gut. Hands trembling, Noah opened his sketchbooks, each page a piece of his shattered dream. Shock gave way to a burning question. Would he fade into silence, or fight to reclaim his truth? If betrayal stole your life's work and the world turned against you, what would you do? Don't miss Noah's battle for justice. Hit subscribe and join us as his story unfolds. Noah Caldwell was a man carved from quiet resolve, his voice woven into the gear he designed rather than the words he spoke. At 41, his tall, lean frame and salt and pepper hair gave him the look of a trail-hardened explorer, even in the polished corridors of Peak Pulse Outdoor Gear's Minneapolis headquarters. His face, etched with lines from long nights and longer hikes, carried a stillness that masked the storm within. He dressed for function, scuffed hiking boots, a faded field jacket, his defiance of the office's sleek aesthetic a silent creed. Noah lived in a cramped apartment where drafting tables and sketchbooks spilled across every surface, leaving little room for comfort or company. Each evening, under a lamp that flickered like a dying star, he sketched gear that answered the wild's call. Backpacks that balanced like a second spine, jackets that stood firm against blizzards. His designs weren't art. They were promises to those who trusted their lives to his craft. Born in Duluth, Noah grew up under his grandfather's steady hands, a kayak craftsman whose workshop smelled of cedar and lake air. By the glow of a wood stove, the old man taught him, design must serve purpose. No waste, no frills. Together, they shaped wooden hulls, Noah's small fingers learning to sand curves that cut through Superior's waves. Those winters forged him, his grandfather's mantra sinking deep, build what lasts, for those who need it. When Noah was 12, his grandfather died, leaving him a worn chisel and a belief in work that mattered. His mother, a schoolteacher, raised him alone, her gentle pride a quiet anchor. Noah carried her love but also guilt. He rarely visited now, his calls too brief. In design school, he was no prodigy, his methodical approach outshone by flashier peers, but professors saw his grit. At 26, he moved to Minneapolis, a young man with a portfolio and a hunger to prove himself. Peak Pulse hired him in its struggling days, its gear reliable but uninspired. Noah, just 34, faced doubt from veteran designers who scoffed at his simplistic ideas. He worked in a dim cubicle, sketching past midnight, pouring his soul into prototypes. His Trailblazer backpacks, with weight distribution so perfect guides swore by them, silenced skeptics. The multiflex jacket system, adapting to storms without bulk, won 2 international awards, doubling Peak Pulse sales in 3 years. Robert, the CEO, clapped Noah's shoulder, calling him the company's heartbeat. Those words warmed Noah, filling the void of his grandfather's absence. But his personal life was a shadow, thin as the light in his apartment. Unmarried, his romances faltered, partners tiring of his late-night sketching, his heart tethered to his work. He had no siblings, no father, only his mother in Duluth, whose weekly calls he answered with love but brevity, guilt gnawing at his distance. His one true friend, Nathan, a materials engineer, had left Peak Pulse for Summit Forge 2 years ago, their bond sealed over campfires where they debated design and dreams. Noah wasn't one for outbursts. His emotions lived in his sketches, each line a vow, each seam a truth. Yet, a fear haunted him. That Peak Pulse, which he saw as family, might not return his devotion. When Clara took over as CEO and hired Sophia, a fashion industry veteran with a taste for gloss, the air shifted. Meetings pivoted from performance to aesthetic disruption, words that grated Noah's ears. Younger designers like Liam, ambitious but untested, were handed key projects, their digital portfolios dazzling Sophia. Noah's concepts, rooted in utility, were dismissed as outdated, his voice drowned in brainstorming sessions. He felt the isolation creep in, whispers behind glass walls, colleagues avoiding his gaze, Mark's pitying looks across the production floor. Liam, once a nervous rookie Noah had coached through presentations, now sidestepped him, his eyes guilty. Noah kept working, believing his gear would speak for him. But the rejections piled up, each one a crack in his foundation. Nights grew sleepless, his sketchbooks filling with designs Sophia would never see, each stroke a plea to be remembered. Deep within, a wound festered. The dread of being erased, of giving his heart to a company that might cast him aside, just as the world had taken his grandfather too soon. As Sophia's critiques sharpened, Noah stood on the edge, his legacy teetering, unaware of the betrayal waiting to strike. The rain's relentless assault on Noah Caldwell's apartment windows felt like a mirror to the storm breaking inside him. But nothing could have braced him for the blow that landed that gray Thursday morning. For months, the signs had been there, gnawing at the edges of his hope. Sophia's curt emails slicing through his designs. Liam's sudden avoidance in the hallways. The way meetings at Peak Pulse Outdoor Gear drowned his voice in a sea of younger, trendier ideas. He'd clung to loyalty, believing his 7 years of devotion would shield him. But at 9 a.m., the illusion shattered. Summoned to Sophia's office, Noah stepped into a space as sterile as a surgical suite, the air thick with the tang of antiseptic polish and unspoken finality. Lauren, the HR rep, sat stiffly in a corner chair, her hands clutching a folder like a lifeline, her eyes fixed on the floor. Sophia, Peak Pulse's new creative director, stood behind her glass desk, her tailored black suit sharp as a blade, her red manicured nails stark against the termination papers she held. She didn't look at Noah, her gaze drifting somewhere beyond him, as if he were already a ghost. "Noah, we need fresh perspectives for our next launch," she said, her voice flat, rehearsed, each word a calculated cut. "Your work no longer aligns with Peak Pulse's creative vision. We're ending your contract." The words hit like a physical blow, stealing the air from Noah's lungs. His chest tightened, a vice clamping his ribs, and his hands trembled in his lap, betraying the calm he tried to project. Shock coursed through him, hot and disorienting, his mind reeling as the room seemed to tilt. 7 years of pouring his soul into Peak Pulse, of crafting gear that carried climbers up mountains and explorers through storms. Reduced to this moment, this cold dismissal from a woman who'd never pitched a tent in a gale. He stared at the papers she slid across the desk, their crisp edges mocking him. Memories flooded unbidden. The first Trailblazer prototype, its straps perfected over sleepless nights, the weight so balanced guides called it magic. The Multiflex jacket, its adaptability winning 2 international awards. Robert's proud grin as he shook Noah's hand. And Liam, the nervous rookie Noah had stayed late to coach, guiding him through his first pitch with a patient, "You've got this, kid." Now it was Ash. Noah's heart pounded, each beat a protest against the surreal truth. He was being erased. Lauren cleared her throat, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "We've prepared a generous severance package, Noah. 3 months' salary, extended benefits." The words blurred, meaningless against the roar in his head. He looked at Sophia, searching for a flicker of humanity, but her face was a mask, her eyes fixed on some distant point, as if his presence were an inconvenience. Noah's fingers closed around the pen Lauren offered, the metal cold against his palm. He signed, each stroke of his name slow, deliberate, as if writing a farewell to the life he'd built. His hand shook, but his face remained still, a fortress against the storm within. "Thank you for the feedback," he said, his voice low, raw, barely above a whisper, the words tasting like ash. He stood, his legs heavy as if wading through mud, and turned to leave. Sophia didn't speak, didn't move, her silence louder than any verdict. The walk back to his desk was a gauntlet of averted eyes. The open-plan office, once a hive of collaboration, now felt like a stage where Noah was the sole actor in a tragedy. Colleagues hunched over monitors, their fingers pausing mid-keystroke, their glances fleeting or absent. The hum of printers and muted phone calls filled the air, a sterile soundtrack to his unraveling. Only Mark, the production manager, met his gaze from across the room, offering a subtle nod, a flicker of solidarity in the void. Noah reached his desk, its surface cluttered with sketches and gear prototypes, a testament to his craft. He packed methodically, each item a weight in his hands. 3 sketchbooks, their pages worn from years of dreaming. His tablet, its screen still glowing with a half-finished design. A faded photo of him and his grandfather by Lake Superior, the lake's chill etched in his memory. The photo trembled in his fingers, his grandfather's stern, kind eyes a reminder of purpose, now distant. He tucked it into his bag, the office's silence pressing against him like a physical force. No one spoke, no one approached. Not Emma, not the interns he'd trained. He slung his bag over his shoulder and walked out, the glass doors hissing shut behind him, sealing away 7 years. In his car, Noah sat motionless, the world blurring through the rain-streaked windshield. His hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, as shock gave way to a hollow ache. His phone buzzed, Mark's text. They just made their biggest mistake. Noah didn't reply, the words too heavy to touch. He drove home, the city's gray sprawl a smear beyond the wipers. In his apartment, the silence was deafening, broken only by the rain's rhythmic assault. He set his bag on the table, the photo of his grandfather catching the dim light. Noah opened a sketchbook, 12 rejected collections staring back. Gear for adventurers, not Sophia's catwalks. He traced a line, her voice echoing, "Not creative enough." Anger flared, a spark in the numbness, but he smothered it. His eyes lingered on the designs, each one a piece of his soul, dismissed by a woman who'd never understood their purpose. A memory surfaced. Liam, grinning as Noah praised his first approved sketch, their camaraderie now a lie. Shock tightened its grip, but a deeper instinct stirred. A hunch that this wasn't just a firing. Something darker hid beneath Sophia's words. Liam's distance, the company's shift. Noah opened his laptop, the screen's glow harsh in the dark. He pulled up Sophia's emails, his fingers steady despite the tremor in his heart. The rain pounded on, a pulse matching his own, as he began to dig, resolve hardening like steel forged in fire. Noah Caldwell sat in the dim glow of his laptop, the rain's ceaseless hammering against his Minneapolis apartment windows, a grim echo of the betrayal that had upended his life. The shock of his firing from peak pulse outdoor gear still pulsed through him. Sophia's cold words, "You lack the creativity we need," ringing like a verdict he couldn't shake. At 41, after 7 years of pouring his soul into designs that carried adventurers through storms, he'd been cast aside, his legacy dismissed by a woman who'd never gripped a climbing rope. But the deeper wound, the one that kept him awake as the clock ticked past midnight, was a gnawing hunch. This wasn't just a firing. Something darker lurked behind Sophia's manicured facade, Liam's averted eyes, and peak pulse's sudden shift to glossy trends. Noah's fingers, still trembling from the morning's shock, hovered over the keyboard. He opened his email, the screen's harsh light carving shadows across his weathered face, and began to hunt for the truth with the precision of a craftsman shaping wood. He started with Sophia's messages, each one a fresh cut. "Your designs don't fit our new direction," she'd written months ago. "We need bolder ideas, Noah." The word stung, but one email stopped him cold. 3 months back, he'd sent her a detailed concept for a modular weatherproof system, backpacks, jackets, and gear that adapted to any condition, every stitch and seam annotated with care. Her reply was curt: "Not viable. Too complex for our market." Yet, at a recent meeting, Noah had watched, heart sinking, as Liam presented a near-identical concept, only the colors tweaked, to Clara's enthusiastic applause. The memory hit like a fist, his breath catching as shock flared anew. Liam, the kid he'd stayed late to mentor, whose nervous stammers Noah had coached into confidence, had stolen his work. Noah's pulse thundered, the apartment's silence amplifying each beat. He opened his hard drive, pulling up his original drawings, their dates stamped months before Liam's pitch. Side by side with the meeting slides, the theft was undeniable, each line a betrayal etched in pixels. Noah's hands shook as he logged into PeakPulse's internal server, his access miraculously still active. He navigated to the production folder, his eyes scanning reports with a desperate focus. There it was, a file from Mark, the production manager, noting issues with Liam's designs. Material flaws Noah had flagged in his own concept, down to the specific waterproofing compound. This was no coincidence. Sophia and Liam had orchestrated a heist, scrubbing Noah's name to clear their path to glory. The realization burned, a molten weight in his chest, but Noah pushed forward, saving every file to an encrypted drive. He needed proof not just for himself, but to unravel the full scope of their deceit. His mind flashed to Liam's grin when Noah had praised his first approved sketch, their late-night talks about design as a calling. That Liam was gone, replaced by a traitor who'd traded Noah's trust for ambition. The phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Mark, his voice low, urgent. "Noah, this is off record. Sophia's telling the board you left no production documentation, that you sabotaged the team. Clara's buying it." Noah's grip tightened, his knuckles whitening. Sabotage? He'd spent weeks training Liam, documenting every process, saving every file to the shared drive. His voice, when he spoke, was steady but raw. "That's a lie, Mark. You know it." Mark sighed.
"Ido."
But Sophia's convincing, and Clara's desperate for a scapegoat. "Watch your back." The call ended, leaving Noah staring at the ceiling, the rain's rhythm a mocking pulse. Sophia wasn't just stealing his designs. She was rewriting his legacy, painting him as the villain to justify her purge. Then came the first escalation, a blow that deepened the betrayal's sting. An email pinged in his inbox, the sender a major retailer Noah had worked with for years, their trust built over trade show handshakes and shared campfire stories. "Noah," it read, "we've received reports you undermined PeakPulse before leaving, breaching ethical standards and leaking trade secrets. We can't partner with you if this is true." Noah's heart plummeted, shock flooding his veins like ice. He called the retailer, his voice tight. "That's not true. I've done nothing but serve PeakPulse." The manager's tone was apologetic but firm. "We got a formal report from PeakPulse, Noah. The serious ethics violations, data leaks. We have to protect our brand." Noah hung up, his mind reeling. Sophia had weaponized his own contact list, shared months ago under a false data sync pretext, to poison his industry ties. This wasn't just a firing, it was a calculated strike to blacklist him, to ensure no outdoor brand would touch him. He found an internal email from Clara, greenlighting Sophia's plan to neutralize Noah's influence with key partners. The words blurred as shock gave way to a quiet fury, not loud or reckless, but a fire kindling deep within. Noah saved the email, his fingers steady now, resolve hardening. This was war, and he would fight with the only weapons he had, truth and proof. The rain hadn't stopped, its relentless beat against Noah Caldwell's apartment windows, a grim reminder of the betrayal that had shattered his world. The shock of his firing from PeakPulse outdoor gear clung to him like damp cold. Sophia's words, "You lack the creativity we need," looping in his mind. But the deeper wound, uncovered in sleepless hours of digging through emails and server files, was the theft of his designs by Liam, his former protege, and Sophia's calculated smear to paint him as a saboteur. Now, as the clock neared 2 a.m., Noah's laptop screen cast a harsh glow across his weary face. Each new discovery a fresh cut. The retailer's email accusing him of ethical breaches, orchestrated by Sophia using his own contact list, had been a brutal escalation, threatening to blacklist him from the outdoor industry he devoted his life to. Yet, Noah sensed the truth was still unfolding, a darker web waiting to be unraveled. His fingers, steadier now despite the ache in his chest, clicked through PeakPulse server, chasing shadows of deceit. A new file stopped him cold. An early draft of his modular weatherproof system, timestamped a year ago, shared with Emma, a colleague he'd trusted. Noah had asked her to review it for material feasibility, her shy smile and quick nod reassuring him then. But a note in the file's metadata revealed she'd forwarded it to Sophia, months before Liam's pitch, with a memo, "Potential for my portfolio if refined." Noah's breath hitched, shock flaring like a spark in dry tinder. Emma, quiet, diligent Emma, who'd thanked him for help on her first project, had leaked his designs to Sophia, angling for a promotion. The betrayal stung sharper than Liam's, a knife twisted by her silence in the office that morning. He remembered her averted gaze as he packed his sketchbooks, her absence when he needed an ally. Noah's hands clenched, the laptop's hum a low growl in the silence. He saved the file, his heart heavy with the weight of another friend lost, another piece of his world crumbling. His phone buzzed, pulling him from the spiral. A text from Nathan, his old friend now at Summit Forge. "Diner, 7 p.m. You need this." Noah hesitated, the idea of leaving his apartment daunting, but Nathan's loyalty was a rare anchor in the storm. He drove through rain-soaked streets, the city's neon lights bleeding into puddles, and entered the diner, its warmth a stark contrast to the chill in his bones. Nathan sat in a corner booth, his rugged face lit by the tablet in his hands, his eyes steady with purpose. "You look like hell," Nathan said, sliding the tablet across the table. Noah managed a faint smile, but it faded as he saw the screen. PeakPulse internal brief for the Zenith series, mock-ups identical to his rejected modular system, credited to Liam. "They're launching in September," Nathan said, his voice low. "Full marketing push, materials already ordered." Noah's pulse quickened, the diner's clatter fading as he scrolled. Every detail, seam placements, weight distribution was his, stolen and rebranded. He felt the shock again, a hollow ache, as if his soul had been stripped bare. Nathan tapped the tablet, opening an email from Sophia to Clara. "Read this." Noah's eyes scanned the words, each one a nail in his heart. "We need to rush Zenith to beat Summit Forge. Ensure retailers know Noah's unprofessional conduct, ethics violations, data leaks, to prevent interference." The email confirmed the smear campaign, Sophia's plan to destroy his career while profiting from his work. Noah's hands trembled, the tablet's light stark against his knuckles. He thought of Liam's grin, Emma's quiet thanks, the retailer's email, each a thread in a web design to erase him. Another email hit his inbox as he sat there, from a second retailer, this one smaller but loyal. "Noah, we're pausing our partnership. Reports of your ethical breaches at PeakPulse are concerning." The words landed like a stone, shock giving way to a crushing realization. PeakPulse wasn't just stealing his designs. They were waging war to ensure he'd never design again. Noah leaned back, the diner's vinyl booth creaking, his mind a storm of hurt and fury. Emma's betrayal, Liam's theft, Sophia's lies, the retailer's rejections. They circled like wolves, threatening to devour him. He saw his grandfather's face, stern yet kind, urging him to build what lasts. "They want me gone," Noah said, his voice low, raw. Nathan leaned forward, eyes fierce. "They don't get to win, Noah. I've been tracking PeakPulse since you got fired. Rachel Carter, Summit Forge's creative director, wants to meet. She knows you're the real deal behind PeakPulse's golden years." Noah's gaze met Nathan's, a flicker of hope piercing the darkness. The industry might shun him, but Summit Forge was a lifeline, a chance to fight back. He nodded, resolve hardening like a blade forged in fire. "Tell her I'll bring my designs," he said, his voice steady now, the shock yielding to purpose. As he left the diner, The rain felt less like a weight and more like a call to battle, each drop urging him toward truth. Noah Caldwell drove through Minneapolis's rain-slicked streets, the city's neon lights blurring into streaks of defiance against the storm. The shock of his firing from Peak Pulse outdoor gear still gripped him, Sophia's dismissal and Liam's theft of his designs a wound that bled with every heartbeat. But the diner meeting with Nathan had lit a spark. Summit Forge's Rachel Carter wanted him, and with Peak Pulse's smear campaign threatening to blacklist him from the industry, Noah knew he couldn't wait. At 41, he'd built gear that saved lives in the wild. Now, he'd build a plan to save his own. His apartment, a fortress of sketchbooks and resolve, became his war room. The rain's relentless drumbeat fueled his focus as he opened his laptop, its glow a beacon in the dark. Noah wasn't driven by rage, but by a craftsman's precision, each step a deliberate strike against the betrayal that had stolen his legacy. He would fight, not with shouts, but with evidence, strategy, and the truth that Peak Pulse couldn't bury. The first move was Summit Forge. Noah met Rachel Carter the next morning in her cluttered office. A chaos of fabric swatches, prototype backpacks, and coffee-stained blueprints that felt like home compared to Sophia's sterile domain. Rachel, her sharp eyes framed by a tangle of auburn hair, leaned back in her chair, studying Noah's portfolio of 6 rejected Peak Pulse designs. His modular weatherproof system, refined to perfection. "This is what we've been chasing," she said, her voice firm, no trace of Sophia's calculated chill. "Function first, but with soul. When can you start?" Noah's chest loosened, a flicker of hope piercing the fog of betrayal. He laid out 2 contract terms, his name as lead designer on the Ascent series and royalties on sales. Rachel didn't hesitate. "We don't steal credit here, Noah. You're in." He shook her hand, the weight of the past 48 hours easing, but not gone. As he left, he glanced at his sketchbooks, their pages a reminder of what Peak Pulse had tried to erase. Summit Forge was his new canvas, and he'd paint it with purpose. Back home, Noah built his team. He called Karen, an intellectual property lawyer recommended by Nathan, her reputation as fierce as her cluttered downtown office suggested. Shelves sagged under legal tomes, and a half-eaten sandwich sat beside her laptop, but her eyes were razor-sharp. Noah handed her a drive with every email, sketch, and server file proving the Zenith series, Peak Pulse's upcoming launch, was his stolen modular system. He showed Sophia's dismissive replies, Liam's pilfered pitch slides, and Mark's production report flagging the same flaws Noah had predicted. Karen scanned the files, her pen tapping a steady rhythm. "They're toast in court," she said, a predator's grin spreading. "This is textbook theft and their sabotage claims? Laughable. We'll bury them." Noah nodded, his voice steady but raw. "I don't want revenge, Karen. I want my name back." She leaned forward, eyes locked on his. "Then we'll make sure the world knows who designed Zenith." Next, Noah recruited Alex, a tech specialist Nathan vouched for, to trace the digital threads of Peak Pulse's campaign. They met in a dimly lit cafe, Alex's hoodie and laptop covered in stickers, a stark contrast to his surgical focus. Noah shared the retailer email accusing him of ethical breaches, Clara's internal memo greenlighting the smear, and his suspicion of a broader plot. Alex's fingers flew across his keyboard, pulling up Peak Pulse server logs. "They're sloppy," he muttered, showing Noah an email from Sophia to a PR firm, dated the day after his firing. "Neutralize Noah's credibility," it read. "Amplify negative sentiment online, forums, social media, whatever it takes." Noah's stomach churned, the words of fresh betrayal. This was the second escalation, a campaign not just to fire him, but to obliterate his reputation. That night, Noah opened an outdoor industry forum, his heart sinking as he saw the damage. Anonymous posts screamed betrayal. Noah Caldwell sold Peak Pulse secrets to Summit Forge. Caldwell's a has-been, sabotaging his own team. The comments piled on, calling him a traitor, a failure. Noah's phone buzzed with hateful messages, strangers echoing the lies, their words like needles. Alex, working remotely, texted, "It's bots. The PR firm's using automated accounts to flood forums and X. I'm tracing the servers now." Noah's hands trembled. The screen's glow harsh against his eyes. He thought of the first retailer's email, then Clara's memo, now this, a coordinated assault to ensure no brand would touch him. The emotional toll was crushing. He hadn't called his mother in days, her worried voicemails piling up, his guilt a heavy shadow. Liam's betrayal stung deepest, a memory surfacing. Noah staying late to refine Liam's first portfolio, their laughter over coffee. Now, an email Alex uncovered revealed Liam's true role, a twist that cut like glass. Liam had suggested Noah's firing to Sophia, writing, "He'll cause trouble if he sees his designs in my pitch." Noah sat back, the rain's rhythm a faint pulse against the pane. Liam hadn't just stolen, he'd orchestrated Noah's erasure. Yet Noah's resolve hardened. He saved every forum screenshot, every email, his fingers steady now, a fire kindling within. PeakPulse had declared war, but Noah was building an arsenal of truth, and he wouldn't falter. Noah Caldwell's war room, his Minneapolis apartment, lit only by the laptop's stark glow and the rain's ceaseless rhythm, hummed with the quiet intensity of a craftsman at work. The betrayal of PeakPulse outdoor gear, Sophia's theft of his designs, and Liam's treachery had shaken him, but Noah channeled the pain into a plan as precise as his sketches. Summit Forge was his new battleground, Rachel Carter his ally, and with Karen and Alex gathering evidence, he was building an arsenal of truth. The PR firm's smear campaign, flooding forums with bot-driven lies branding him a traitor, had escalated the fight, its hateful messages a daily assault. Yet, Noah's resolve burned brighter, each piece of proof a step toward reclaiming his name. He wasn't fighting for revenge but for the legacy PeakPulse tried to erase, and he knew the next moves had to be flawless. Noah's first strike was a trap, as cunning as it was subtle. Over coffee with Rachel, he proposed a calculated risk. Summit Forge would send PeakPulse a fake partnership offer, hinting at shared design interests for the upcoming season. Rachel raised an eyebrow, her fingers tapping her mug. "You're playing with fire, Noah. If Sophia bites, we've got her." Noah nodded, his voice steady. "She'll bite. She's too arrogant not to." Karen drafted the letter, its language vague but enticing, suggesting a collaboration to leverage complementary innovations. Noah watched the email go out, his heart pounding as if he just pitched a tent in a gale. 2 days later, Sophia responded, her email dripping with self-assurance. "The Zenith series is Liam's original creation, a bold step for PeakPulse. We're open to discussing terms." Noah stared at the screen, the words a confession etched in digital ink. Karen saved the email, her grin sharp. "This is gold, Noah. She just handed us proof of theft." Noah exhaled, the weight of Liam's betrayal. His suggestion to fire Noah, revealed in Alex's findings, still heavy. He saw Liam's face, grinning over late-night sketches, now a ghost of trust lost. Noah needed more, and Mark, the production manager, became his eyes inside PeakPulse. Over an encrypted call, Noah asked Mark to record Sophia's meetings, specifically those discussing managing Noah. Mark hesitated, his voice low. "This could cost me my job, Noah. But what they're doing to you, it's wrong." He agreed, slipping a small recorder into his pocket during a tense boardroom session. The audio, sent to Noah late that night, was damning. Sophia's voice, clipped and commanding, detailing the smear campaign. "Noah's a liability," she said. "Keep pushing the ethics narrative with retailers and ensure the forums stay active. Liam's Zenith credit must be airtight." Noah listened, his hands clenching, the rain outside a faint echo of his pulse. Mark's files joined Karen's growing dossier, each recording a brick in the wall of evidence that would topple PeakPulse lies. Then came an unexpected ally, a whisper of hope in the storm. An anonymous email landed in Noah's inbox, the subject line blank. "I don't agree with what they did to you," it read. "I was in the room when Sophia admitted taking your designs. I recorded it." Attached was an audio file, the sender's identity hidden but unmistakable. Lauren, the quiet HR rep from Noah's firing, her nervous presence in Sophia's office now a silent act of courage. Noah played the file, his breath catching as Sophia's voice filled the room. Noah's concepts were solid, but Liam's name sells better for Zenith. We reworked them, no trace back to him. The admission was a bombshell, proof of theft straight from the source. Noah forwarded it to Karen, who called immediately. "This is the knockout punch," she said, her voice electric. "Lauren's our wild card." Noah leaned back, the laptop's glow softening the apartment's shadows. Lauren, underestimated by all, had given him a weapon he hadn't dared hope for. Noah turned to the public front, countering the PR smear that branded him a traitor. He drafted emails to key retailers, his words calm but firm, denying PeakPulse lies, ethical breaches, data leaks, with Karen's legal affirmation attached, stating his clean exit and ownership of his designs. Some retailers responded with cautious support, one writing, "We trust you, Noah, but the rumors are loud." Others stayed silent, the smear's damage lingering like a stain. Noah's phone buzzed with more hateful messages, forum posts amplifying the lies. Caldwell's finished. Each one stung, but Noah pushed through, his mother's unanswered voicemails a reminder of the life he was fighting for. He thought of his grandfather, shaping kayaks with purpose, and steeled himself. The smear wouldn't break him. At Summit Forge's factory, Noah threw himself into the Ascent series, working 16-hour shifts under the hum of sewing machines and the tang of fresh fabric. He tested prototypes, adjusting zippers and waterproofing, his hands steady despite sleepless nights. The Ascent wasn't just gear. It was his defiance, a testament to the truth PeakPulse couldn't bury. Rachel watched him, her nod a silent approval. "You're building more than a collection, Noah," she said. He met her gaze, resolve burning. "I'm building my way back." As the launch neared, Noah finalized his plan. The trap was set, the evidence secured, the retailers wavering but reachable. PeakPulse lies were unraveling, and Noah stood ready, a craftsman wielding truth as his tool. The rain outside softened, a promise of clearer skies. Want to see Noah's triumph unfold? Hit subscribe and join us for his epic comeback. August 12th broke over Minneapolis like a thunderclap, and the Ascent series launched with a force that shook the outdoor industry to its core. Noah Caldwell stood in Summit Forge's factory, the hum of sewing machines and the tang of fresh fabric a stark contrast to the sterile offices of PeakPulse Outdoor Gear, where he'd been fired weeks ago. The website crashed twice within hours, overwhelmed by a flood of orders from retailers and adventurers alike. Phones rang off the hook, buyers clamoring for stock, their voices urgent with demand. Outside Magazine's review hit first, calling Ascent revolutionary, a new benchmark for gear that marries function with soul. Gear Junkie followed, praising its uncompromising design, a masterwork by Noah Caldwell, formerly of PeakPulse. Noah's name blazed in every headline, a beacon cutting through the fog of betrayal that had nearly buried him. At 41, after 7 years of crafting gear that saved lives in the wild, he was back. Not with vengeance, but with truth. Rachel Carter, Summit Forge's creative director, clapped his shoulder as they watched the chaos unfold, her grin wide. "You did this, Noah. The world's listening now." Noah nodded, his weathered face still, but inside, a weight lifted, the shock of Sophia's dismissal and Liam's theft fading under the roar of his comeback. Summit Forge seized the moment, releasing a statement affirming Noah's original work, explicitly distancing Ascent from PeakPulse influence. Rachel sent it to every major outlet, offering Noah for interviews, but he declined, his voice quiet. "Let the gear speak," he said, his eyes on a prototype backpack. It seems as deliberate as his resolve. The industry buzzed, but the true explosion came 3 days later, when Outside Magazine dropped a bombshell article. Twins or theft? The truth behind 2 designs. Karen, Noah's intellectual property lawyer, had leaked a trove of evidence. Sophia's emails dismissing Noah's modular weatherproof system, Liam's pilfered pitch slides, Mark's production reports, Lauren's recording of Sophia admitting the theft, and Alex's server logs tying Sophia to the PR firm's smear campaign. The article laid it bare. Noah had created both Ascent and PeakPulse Zenith series, the latter stolen and rebranded to erase him. It detailed the smear, quoting Sophia's order to amplify negative sentiment on forums and social media, using bots to brand Noah a traitor. The piece was merciless, calling PeakPulse's actions a betrayal of trust, not just of Noah Caldwell, but of the industry's integrity. Readers devoured it, the story spreading across X and forums, with users posting side-by-side comparisons of Ascent and Zenith mockups. Noah got screwed, one viral thread declared, its upvotes soaring. The smear campaign, once a relentless tide of lies, accusing Noah of ethical breaches, data leaks, began to crack, its foundation crumbling under the weight of truth. PeakPulse reeled, its Minneapolis headquarters a hive of panic. Nathan, Noah's friend at Summit Forge, texted him that morning. Sophia's in meltdown mode. Legals scrambling. Noah read the message in his apartment, the rain now a distant patter, and felt no glee, only a quiet certainty. Clara, PeakPulse CEO, called him that afternoon, her voice trembling with a mix of desperation and accusation. "This is unprofessional, Noah," she said. The words rushed, brittle. "You're sabotaging us, leaking lies to the press, destroying our reputation." Noah stood by his window, the city's skyline sharp against the clearing sky, and let her words hang. His response was calm, each syllable honed like a blade. "I'm building for Summit Forge, Clara. If your Zenith designs mirror mine, ask Sophia why she dismissed my work. If my name's stained, ask your PR firm why they spread lies about me." Clara sputtered, her authority unraveling. "You don't understand the pressure we're under," she began, but Noah cut her off. "I understand betrayal. You backed the wrong side." He hung up, his heart steady, the shock of his firing now a distant echo. Clara's call was a sign. PeakPulse was crumbling, and Noah's truth was the wedge splitting it apart. The final showdown came at a Denver trade show, the industry's annual crucible where brands vied for dominance under bright lights and the buzz of deal-making. Noah arrived with Rachel, his Ascent Series booth swarmed by buyers, their excitement a stark contrast to PeakPulse's subdued display across the hall. Sophia stood there, her tailored suit pristine but her face taut, her red nails tapping nervously against a clipboard. Whispers rippled through the crowd, retailers, designers, journalists, all aware of Outside Magazine's article, their eyes darting between Noah and PeakPulse. Noah felt the weight of their scrutiny, but he walked with purpose, his worn hiking boots grounding him. He hadn't come to gloat, only to showcase Ascent, yet fate had other plans. Sophia spotted him at the show's networking bar, the air thick with whiskey fumes and murmured deals. She called him over, her voice loud, drawing eyes. "Think you've won, Noah?" She spat, her glass trembling, her composure fraying before a growing audience of industry peers. Her words carried heads-turning buyers from REI, editors from Gear Junkie, even Summit Forge's competitors. Noah met her gaze, his face a mask of calm, though his heart pounded. "I don't need to win, Sophia," he said, his voice low but clear, cutting through the bar's hum. "Truth does." He pulled out his phone, the screen glowing with Karen's dossier. Sophia's emails coaching Liam to reframe Noah's designs, Lauren's recording of her admitting the theft, Alex's logs proving the PR firm's bot-driven slander, Mark's audio of her smear tactics. "This goes to courts and every outlet here unless PeakPulse stops," he said, his words steady, the crowd's murmurs rising. He swiped to Lauren's recording, playing a snippet, Sophia's voice, smug. Noah's concepts were solid, but Liam's name sells better. Gasps rippled through the onlookers, a retailer whispering, "That's theft." Sophia's face drained of color, her glass nearly slipping. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, but her bravado cracked, her eyes darting to the crowd, journalists scribbling, buyers stepping back. Noah's faint smile was steel. "I don't need to. I have proof." He pocketed his phone and walked away, the bar's silence deafening as Sophia stood frozen, her clipboard clattering to the floor. Whispers exploded. PeakPulse stole his work. Noah's the real deal. The industry's verdict swift and merciless. PeakPulse collapsed under the weight of its lies. Karen's final letter, sent the next day, was a masterstroke. A 20-page demand backed by every piece of evidence, emails, recordings, server logs, calling for Zenith's cancellation, a public apology, and compensation for Noah's defamation, or face lawsuits for theft and slander. Peak Pulse board, battered by plummeting stock prices and retailer defections, caved. A week later, they announced Zenith's postponement for refinement, a thinly veiled surrender. Analysts tore into the move, calling it a fatal misstep. The stock dropped 8% overnight, erasing millions in value. Clara resigned, her exit a quiet admission of failure, her legacy tainted. Sophia was fired without fanfare, her name scrubbed from Peak Pulse website. Her fashion world sheen no match for the industry's scorn. The PR firm, exposed for its bot-driven slander, faced a boycott, its clients fleeing as its reputation crumbled. Retailers who'd shunned Noah began to return, one emailing, "We were wrong to doubt you. Ascents the future." Forums shifted, users championing Noah with threads like Caldwell's redemption. The smear campaign's lies drowned out by truth's rising tide. Noah stood apart, declining every interview, his voice absent from the media frenzy. He sat in Summit Forge's factory, testing a new prototype, the needle's hum a steady rhythm. Rachel watched, her respect unspoken but clear. "You could have milked this, Noah," she said. He shrugged, adjusting a strap. "I didn't need to. The work speaks." Inside, he felt unshackled, not just from Peak Pulse, but from the weight of betrayal that had nearly defined him. The shock of Sophia's dismissal, Liam's theft, Emma's leak, the retailer's rejections, the PR firm's venom, all had tested him, but they'd also revealed his strength. He thought of his grandfather, shaping kayaks with purpose, and his mother's voice, soft with pride. Noah hadn't fought for revenge but for what was right, proving no lie could outshine the truth. As the trade show's echoes faded, he walked Minneapolis's streets, the sky clear, the rain gone. Ascent was his triumph, but more than that, it was his freedom. A legacy rebuilt, not in anger, but in the quiet power of a craftsman's truth. Noah Caldwell didn't chase the spotlight after his triumph over Peak Pulse outdoor gear. The Ascent series launch, the Outside Magazine expose, and the Denver Trade Show confrontation had restored his name, toppling Sophia, Clara, and their web of lies. Retailers returned, forums championed him, and Peak Pulse Zenith series crumbled, their stock plunging as Clara resigned and Sophia vanished into obscurity. Yet, Noah sought no fanfare, no interviews to revel in the victory. At 41, he'd learned that true strength lay not in vengeance, but in building what lasts. A lesson carved into him by his grandfather's hands in a Duluth workshop decades ago. He left Minneapolis's urban hum for a cedar cabin on the city's outskirts, its windows framing a winding creek and trails where dawn broke in golden hues. Each morning, Noah sat on the porch, sketchbook open, the creek's murmur blending with the scratch of his pencil. Designs flowed freely now, gear for adventurers, not trends. His heart unburdened by the betrayal that had nearly broken him. Summit Forge named him design director, granting full creative reign over 3 collections. The Ascent series royalties ensuring comfort, but his passion driving him forward. The cabin's simplicity, its walls lined with sketches and a single photo of his grandfather by Lake Superior, was his sanctuary, a place where the rain's echo no longer carried pain but promise. Life softened, its edges rounded by purpose and connection. Noah drove to Duluth one crisp weekend, the familiar scent of pine and lake air stirring memories of his grandfather's kayak workshop. His mother, her hair grayer but her smile unchanged, welcomed him into her modest home. They spent days rebuilding her sagging porch, Noah's hands steady as he hammered nails, her laughter a balm to the guilt he'd carried for years of brief calls and rare visits. Over coffee one evening, she took his hand, her eyes misty. "Your grandfather would be so proud, Noah. You never lost his way, building things that matter." The words mended a wound he hadn't named, her pride a tether to the boy who'd sanded wood by a wood stove. He stayed longer than planned, their stories of Duluth's winters weaving a warmth he'd forgotten. Back in Minneapolis, Noah reconnected with Nathan and Mark, their bond unbroken by Peak Pulse chaos. They camped in Minnesota's forests, the campfire's crackle a backdrop to laughter and blueprints sketched in the dirt. Nathan raised a beer, grinning. To Noah, who took down an empire with a pencil. Mark nodded, his quiet loyalty a steady presence. Noah smiled, the stars above a reminder that he wasn't alone, that betrayal hadn't stolen everyone. A package arrived at the cabin one morning, its weight familiar in Noah's hands. Inside were his old Peak Pulse sketchbooks, their pages worn but alive with his vision, accompanied by a note from Mark. These belong to you. Sophia's gone and Peak Pulse is a shell. Thank you for standing tall. Noah traced a sketch, a storm-proof tent system he'd never shared, its lines bold with purpose. The note's words echoed his grandfather's. Build for those who need it. He called Rachel immediately, his voice steady. I've got a winter idea. Lightweight, storm-ready. She laughed, her warmth crackling through the phone. You never stop, do you? Noah smiled, the sketchbook open before him, a new chapter unfolding. The package was more than paper. It was proof that his work endured, that Peak Pulse's attempt to erase him had failed. He tucked the sketchbooks beside his grandfather's photo, their presence a quiet victory, a reclaiming of the legacy Sophia and Liam had tried to steal. Months later, an email from Liam pierced the calm. Noah, I'm sorry, it read. I followed Sophia and lost myself, betrayed you for ambition. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know. Noah sat in the cabin, the creek's murmur soft outside, and read the words again. Liam's face flashed, grinning over coffee, nervous before a pitch, now a stranger who'd suggested Noah's firing to save his own skin. The betrayal still stung, a dull ache, but Noah felt no anger. Liam would carry his guilt, a weight Noah didn't need to share. He closed the laptop, choosing silence over response, not out of spite but closure. The past was done. His future was in the sketches piling up, the gear he'd build, the life he was crafting. Liam's apology was a ghost, and Noah was free to walk in the light. At Summit Forge, Noah poured his heart into a mentorship program, teaching young designers to weave function with form. One evening, in a sunlit studio, he spoke to a room of eager faces, their pencils poised. Design for those who need it, he said, echoing his grandfather. Not for applause. A student, her eyes bright, thanked him after, her sincerity a faint echo of Liam's old gratitude. The memory brushed Noah, but he nodded, seeing hope in her ambition, not betrayal. Summit Forge soared, overtaking Peak Pulse as the industry's leader, its factory buzzing with Noah's vision. He donated a cent's royalties to preserve Minnesota's forests, where he tested his first gear as a young designer, each contribution a tribute to the trails that shaped him. The forests, like his designs, would endure, a legacy beyond Peak Pulse's reach. On a spring morning, Noah stood on a trail near his cabin, sunlight dancing on a lake, the air crisp with promise. He wore his old field jacket, scuffed boots crunching gravel, a sketchbook tucked under his arm. The water's shimmer recalled Lake Superior, his grandfather's stern voice guiding his hands over wood. Build what lasts, Noah. He thought of Peak Pulse, Sophia's cold dismissal, Liam's theft, Emma's leak, the retailer's rejections, the PR firm's venomous lies. They tried to break him, to erase 7 years of work and a lifetime of purpose. But they hadn't. The smear campaign had faded, retailers had returned, and Ascent had proven his worth. Noah's triumph wasn't in Peak Pulse collapse, stock drops, resignations, a shunned PR firm, but in what he'd built, gear that served, a life reclaimed, a name restored. He saw his mother's pride, Nathan's loyalty, Mark's note, Rachel's trust. Betrayal had tested him, but it had also shown what mattered. Creating with purpose, not for glory. Life wasn't about revenge, but building better one design at a time. Loved Noah's journey? Subscribe for more tales of triumph and truth, just a click away. In betrayal's shadow, talent and integrity shine brightest. Trust your worth. It will carry you through any storm.